So today we're going to be taking a look at the alternative future of the world. Continuing on with our series, we are now on part 5 and we are rolling right through this. So when I first started this series, I was a little bit wary on whether or not it would do well enough to continue. And I know I say this every alternative future video, but showing support in these videos does help, and you guys have shown a lot of support. So I will be continuing the series, and I will most likely finish it. But last time we took a look at a few events around the world, such as the Chinese Civil War finishing up, as well as the finishing of the Mexican Civil War. Venezuela got taken over by pretty much everyone in the Americas. But anyway, we're going to be moving on today. We're going to be doing some things that will pretty much set the stage for the largest conflict in this series so far. So if you enjoy this series and you want to see more, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. By the time this video is out, we're probably really close to 60k, and I'm saying this because I'm not sure. I'm recording this on a Wednesday, and this video will be posted not this Saturday but next Saturday. So this video is being recorded a week and a half before it's posted, and that's because I'm going on vacation. By the time this comes out, I'm already on my way back. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the scenario. So let's start off by looking at the alliance map. Now here we can see a lot of attack one, attack all organizations such as CSTO. Of course, we have NATO in the blue. In the purple, we have Canada, the United States, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. This is basically just AUKUS/CANZUK combined. In the orange, we have a defensive pact between the US, France, Morocco, Tunisia, and occupied territories. We have the East African Federation, the Rio Pact, the Gulf Shield Defense Pact, an Access Pact between Iran, Iraq, and Yemen, and then the PDO, the Pacific Defense Organization. Now, in my opinion, that's too much. So we have a lot of these alliances kind of merging in together. Now, NATO in this scenario has reached its capacity for the Northern Atlantic. The equator lies somewhere around this area, a little bit north, I believe, and everyone above that is considered the Northern Atlantic. As far as countries over here go, I don't think anyone else really wants to join. So NATO kind of rebrands itself into the World Defensive Organization, or the WDO. Essentially, it's just loosening the requirements. You no longer have to necessarily be a democracy to join this alliance, since differing opinions have become a lot more accepted in this world, or have they? And the WDO basically just wants more members. Now, the ratification process for this alliance is the same as it is in NATO. So right now, Finland and Sweden are going through that ratification process. Every NATO country is kind of processing their application and ratifying it. As of the time this video is posted, I'm sure tons and tons of countries have already ratified, but for me, that's only around 6. But yeah, that same ratification process is in place in this scenario. And now the WDO, aka NATO, wants to implement Australia and New Zealand to the alliance. No one has objections to this other than Turkey, who kind of delays it by being the last one to submit the ratification. But eventually they do that. And Australia and New Zealand jointly become NATO members at the same time. Very similar to Sweden and Finland's joint membership application process. So with this, we really don't have a point for the Purple Alliance anymore, as it has pretty much just merged with NATO. It looks a lot cleaner, but we have yet another merge. This time it's between the United States, France, Morocco, and Tunisia. Now, I was kind of on a line considering Morocco and Tunisia here. Both of these guys are major non-NATO US allies, but when it comes to Europe, there are some countries here that don't favor these two countries, one of them being Spain, who holds sour relations with Morocco over past disputes. And honestly, Tunisia is just vibing, so I don't think anyone objects to them. So Tunisia is ratified into NATO, or I should probably start calling it the WDO. So if you hear me say NATO, just assume I'm talking about the WDO. And when I say WDO, that refers to NATO and the merged alliances. But the application process for Morocco is a little bit slow. Also, if you can't remember, Algeria is occupied by France right now, and Libya by the United States. They don't necessarily have sovereignty. They're seen as part of the US and France, so that's why they are involved in this. So right now we're in a stalemate, with Spain being the only country to block Morocco from joining. Much like how Turkey was the one vetoing Sweden and Finland, which has now been lifted due to a compromise. We have a similar event taking place with these two countries, with Morocco coming to a compromise in order for Spain to accept them. Eventually that compromise is met, and Morocco officially joins the WDO. And just like that, we have two alliances being merged into the WDO, and the world map looks a lot better. Now notably, this alliance is huge and it is very strong. Just by merging these two alliances into the WDO, their fronts have expanded. They now have access to Northern Africa, which they already kind of had, but now officially, and then they also have access to Oceania. But the WDO isn't currently the only alliance expanding. This is because we have Mongolia opting to join in on CSTO. In addition to this, we also have Uzbekistan and Afghanistan joining. Now, like I've said before, this is taking place in around 2065, 2070, that area. So that's a good 50 years from now. The governments of Uzbekistan and Afghanistan have changed greatly, and they have both decided that joining the CSTO is of their best interests. Another countries whose politics have changed greatly is Pakistan's, who in real life has actually been leaning more towards Russia. But in this scenario, they go all the way and decide to join the CSTO on the side of Russia. Now, this is a problem because India is an ally to Russia in real life. But the westernization process in India had really kicked up around 30 years ago in this timeline, meaning that they are more connected with the West than they are with Russia, severing ties a while ago after Russia did some things in Eastern Europe. So India is okay with this because they really don't care anymore. Their closest allies now are considered to be Japan, Korea, Israel, Tibet, Nepal, Bhutan, Australia, and then of course the United States. India's biggest enemies are seen as Pakistan and Afghanistan, previously Myanmar, but they got liberated, and newly Iran. India decides to stay neutral for now as they are still going through the process of westernization and fixing up their economy, but they are on track to become a superpower, much like Russia and the United States. Now, speaking of superpowers, I don't think I touched up on that too much in the last video, but the United States and Russia are both superpowers now. So Russia had gained superpower status while the US continued to be a superpower. Obviously, China didn't get that status because it kind of collapsed, but this new Chinese republic so far has been healing from the Civil War pretty good. They have around the 15th strongest economy in the world, and military-wise, well, they're a little weak, but they could definitely grow into becoming stronger. Japan and Korea both hold a strong suit over here in East Asia, while other powers in the world include Turkey, the UK, France, Germany, Poland, Brazil, and then of course India is also a major power. But yeah, that's enough about alliances. You can see how this has greatly changed the world. Let's go ahead and take a look at some actual conflicts. The first of which is the PDO picking up where it left off. You see, Vietnam has really moved away from communism in this timeline. Now, I know I just said let's take a look at conflicts, and here we are back on the alliance map, but this has something to do with what's about to happen. Vietnam, like I just said, has moved away from communism and has become more of a capitalistic country, and they are allied with the United States both in real life and in this scenario. The PDO seeks to literally destroy communism in all forms, and that's pretty much already been done as Cuba has been annexed by the US. Myanmar, which isn't communist, but they were almost there. North Korea was annexed by South Korea, and then China collapsed. Now there's only one communist country left, which is Laos. So what does the PDO do? Well, they pulled on America in the 1960s and 70s. Now, Vietnam isn't officially a member of the PDO, but they do work closely with them, and they were even providing intel during the Chinese Civil War. So with this, we have a joint operation between all of the PDO, Vietnam, and then the Myanmar puppet. Vietnam has experience in their own jungle, so they do lead this campaign, but China does help out. And eventually Laos capitulates. Followed by this is another campaign, but this time into Cambodia. Once again, not communist, but they did have a communist history, and Vietnam is very familiar with invading this region. So they move in and quickly take over all of Cambodia using their amazing guerrilla warfare. Now it's time for them to ratify a peace treaty in which looks something like this. Now you might be curious as to why Thailand was given land. Well, in this scenario, and once again in real life, Thailand is considered a major non-NATO US ally, and the US was the one that kind of led this operation, so they decided to give Thailand land in exchange for support for the PDO. Now, just like Vietnam, they didn't directly join the PDO, but they are now both considered partners to the alliance, and with this launches the Pdo Partner Program, much like the Pdo Partner Program, which as of now only consists of Azerbaijan as a partner. And for a real-life example, we'll use NATO. So a NATO partner is a country that isn't in NATO but works closely with it. An example of a NATO partner would be Ukraine, Bosnia and Herzegovina, or Georgia. The Article 5 thing doesn't apply to them, but they do get NATO support, they get NATO help, and they are invited to some of the NATO meetings. And this launches the Pdo Partner Program, which was previously not a thing. So now countries are allowed to apply to that. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at another event taking place, and this one is kind of major. We have a union forming over here in Western Africa between a lot of these countries, some of which are Mali, Niger, Benin, Togo, Ghana. All of these countries over here that are in the union, I mean, I'm not going to name them all because I forgot already. Burkina Faso, Mauritania. None of these countries were ever aligned, so it's kind of okay for them to do this. No one's in an alliance, so it doesn't create any issues. But the union name for this is just the Union of Western African Countries. Not a very creative name, but, you know, at least it's better than being independent. But the main reason for this country's existence is that all of the members within are in one way or another struggling economically. Now, this alliance will grow over time with members over here in West Africa all eyeing it up and seeing it as a good opportunity. in order to help their own economies. Nigeria, though, isn't too happy about this because they maybe wanted to expand over here, but now they can't go there. So they now set their eyes over towards Cameroon and Chad, when we all know that they wouldn't dare invade Chad. So mostly just Cameroon. Troops built up on the border, and Cameroon is very scared. Over in the Americas, speaking of bad economies, Haiti and the Dominican Republic are dying. Honestly, Haiti probably would have already died if this was a accurate timeline, but now they're really dead, and good old Uncle Sam has something to say about that. But wait a minute, what about the Rio Pact? Well, the United States basically runs that thing. They told every member to look away and to ignore what's happening in the Caribbean, and everyone basically complied because they like being defended by the United States, much like Europe in present day. So just like that, the Caribbean is becoming a lot more American, and now we even have the Bahamas opting to integrate into the Union. This totally isn't because they're sinking and have no economy anymore or anything. Oh yeah, global warming. A lot of islands would be underwater at this point, but I'm not a scientist, so we're going to ignore that. Famous last words. There's one thing I want to do over here in Asia real quick, and I want to apologize for not including this in the last alternative future video. But I didn't give India its claims over here in China. Now, India did, in a way, kind of invade China and get some land out of it. They got land over here. That was some of their claim, but they also extended past that. But I totally forgot about their whole Kashmir claim over here. So there you go, India. You can now have your Chinese claims, and that looks a lot cooler, to be honest. Now, Tibet would lose land from this, and it looks Tibet look kind of weird, but this is just how it goes. And Tibet is probably fine with this because they are technically allied to India in this scenario. Now, there's only one more claim to settle. But not yet, because we have other things we need to do, such as the Iraqi Civil War, which is oddly enough very close to Turkey. So yeah, we actually have Iraq coming out into a civil war, which automatically activates the axis of resistance. So now these guys are involved, although I'm not really sure what you are doing. Iran starts to send assistance, but oh no, another rebel group has popped up. Huh, this one's really close to Saudi Arabia. That's kind of weird. But yeah, once again, Iraq becomes war-torn for the 100th time in history. And well, just to add pain to the burn, the red and green teams up against Iraq. If I said Iran instead of Iraq there, I'm sorry. But yeah, Iraq starts to get obliterated by the Civil War. It's almost like they're being funded by other people. That's kind of weird. But eventually the rebels do manage to capture Baghdad, and all of Western Iraq falls, which only leads these little two slithers. Now Iran is not okay with this, and they start to send their entire military over in order to stabilize Iraq. Turkey says, hey, you don't want to do that because we're totally not funding these guys or anything. And Saudi Arabia says the exact same thing. Iran becomes very frustrated by this. But nonetheless, they do send their troops over near the border in order to push back these rebels. Iran claims that these guys were trying to push into their territory and are only defending themselves, but they also do try to liberate Iraq. Turkey and Saudi Arabia both state that if they further push into this territory, that they will be forced to declare war, which may or may not activate a series of treaties and alliances. Seeing this, Iran gets very angry, but nonetheless, Iranian troops retreat from Iraq, and the whole country falls to the rebels. From here, these two rebel groups unite into one, and a peace treaty is drawn up. In said peace treaty, a new government is established, which is very pro-Turkish and Saudi Arabian. And in less than a week later, we have Iraq being partitioned between its neighbors, which include Jordan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. Very strange things happening here. But hey, some crazy things can happen when you take advantage of a country with internal problems. Haven't ever seen someone do that in history before. And yeah, the Middle East looks like this now. Now, how does this leave Iran? Very angry. This is mostly because they lost one of their allies, which was in the axis of resistance, and Yemen is quite useless. So Iran says, you know what, this whole my own alliance thing isn't working out. And they decide to join the CSTO, which is a big blow to Western countries, and then of course the Middle East, but also a big blow to Yemen, who is left alone. Well, they also quickly joined the CSTO, and the CSTO is very scary now. Now, this is not something that Turkey and Saudi Arabia accounted for when they totally didn't fund an Iraqi civil war. You know, that wasn't them or anything. But now that Iran and Yemen are both in the CSTO, and you know, Turkey is kind of surrounded by CSTO members, as well as Azerbaijan, and then Saudi Arabia is surrounded by CSTO members, they feel like they're threatened. So who does what with who? Well, obviously the only way to really counter this is expansion. So this somehow managed to get Jordan to join the Gulf Defense, while we have Israel sitting here not being able to join the WDO because of one country, Tunisia. It's like 2060 now. Tunisia is the only WDO member that doesn't recognize Israel, and it's like 1 against 40. So yeah, they're kind of forced into letting Israel in. But this leaves a problem for Palestine, who somehow still exists. I don't mean that in a mean way, but you know, Israel and Palestine are currently in some sort of active conflict. Not active conflict, but there's stuff going on. I can't say the word because of YouTube. What does Palestine do? Well, I have no logical way to settle this conflict in this scenario. If I do one thing, everyone's going to be mad. If I do another, everyone else will be mad. And it's just it's impossible to do something with this. I don't want to get rid of Palestine because that would set off everybody, but if I got rid of Israel, that would set off everybody else. So we have a union between Palestine and Israel being formed. That's right, they settled their differences. Israel becomes a Jewish Muslim state, no longer an active conflict. Everybody loves each other, and this totally wasn't just merged by me to find a solution that wouldn't make people angry. Now this will still definitely make people angry because everyone hates each other. That's just how the world works. But yeah, this is the most likely solution 40 years from now. And just like that, the stage is pretty much set for one large global conflict. Like literally everything's in place. We have two large alliances that hate each other. We have Africa, who is doing nothing. And then we have a whole bunch of countries committing war crimes in other countries. It all makes sense. Seems realistic to me. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today's alternative future video. Now I know this one didn't have any major events like the other videos, but that's just simply because like I said in the beginning, we are setting the stage for everything else. And yeah, next alternative future video, we're going to be having one large scale conflict breakout, maybe, and it is really going to change the fate of the series. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Link to the Discord server in the description if you want to join it. Actually, there's a bunch of social links in the description. You should probably click them all and follow me on all of them. And yeah, so stay tuned for the next episode of Alternative Future, and I will see you guys in the next video.